Before
Shall
we
get? All right. Well, now that we've got an intro, lads, we may as well play the intro, and then we'll rip in.
Oh, good.
Is there music for this, or is it bloody?
We got music. Can you hear it? Oh, jokes. It's on mute.
No.
Was that you getting the ball or passing the ball?
No. What do you mean?
Passing. When you passing it to yourself?
Oh, I forgot that. I was confident in that fight and got folded. There it is.
How good?
Settler. Oh, look at the HMT.
Oh, how good.
Nice.
There'll be another one added to that soon, boys. I don't know what it is yet, but there'll be another one added.
Natural or something?
Still don't know yet.
I don't know.
Still don't know yet. Still working on the name. I'll talk to you soon.
How good. Now that we got that intro, lads, plenty of good memories there. Good ones and bad ones, but we'll rip into today's show. So thanks for joining us on episode 3 of The Settler. Obviously, a rugby show where we just settle a few scores and our panel dive into a few different things about the game of rugby. Today, we're looking at player development. So pretty keen to speak to our panel about this one, in particularly for Australian rugby and maybe some comparisons with New Zealand rugby as well with the boys' experience. Joining us, as always, panel, Sam Wykes, Peck Cowan, Robbie Abel. We might start with you, Peck, mate. Congratulations on the debut with Wellington yesterday. How's the body? I know it's been a while since you've chalked up some minutes on the field. How'd you go?
It's been a while. No, it was pretty good. It's pretty hard to get sore after only playing 15 minutes. So they're looking after me still. But no, it was really awesome. I kind of mentioned to Sam, like in the warm up and stuff, like I was pretty pumped, pretty emotional because I was, I never really thought I'd be given that opportunity to be a part of the Wellington Lions and join that family. Kind of it's just strange and funny how everything's kind of gone 360, and I'm back in New Zealand playing footy here. I never would have seen it coming. So yeah, just really awesome. We didn't get the result, which is, kind of disappointing for us and for the group, but we had a lot of stuff going on off field that I think as a group we dealt with fairly well, and I think we'll only be better for that moving into the rest of the season. So yeah, it was just really awesome to do that.
Yeah, awesome. You've had a massive last 24 months, just what's needed to happen, things falling into place for you to get to where you are now. Robbie, how you going, mate, over there? I know Auckland, just a few challenges with you guys getting into the competition. How's things and what's the updates?
You're on mute, Kaz.
I'll mute myself there. Fair few challenges getting back into the comp. I guess just with the lockdown in Auckland, with the 3 teams here, us, North Harbour and counties. But I guess it's all up to we're all up at the mercy of the government at the moment. We'll just be in whenever we can. I think there's a fair few different plans on if we can get in or how we can get in and what those look like. But yeah, everyone's just keen to play. We tried to move. We got denied on our access to our. We got denied moving, relocating our team. So is what it is. Hey, we're kind of just waiting to see where we go.
Hopefully they work something out for you guys. But yeah, I think like you said, just control the controllables, focus on what you can. And Waxy, there's obviously a lot of rugby going on at the moment between these guys playing the Wallabies. Are you missing being in and around it?
To be honest, I'm not. I see some of just the hits and stuff that happened. I just do not miss it all contact. I really hated that part of the game. But bro, I take my hat off watching Pekka go around again yesterday. Just seeing him, and he actually went pretty well. I'm not pissing in his pocket here, but just someone who hasn't played in 4 months or whatever, or and sort of did his calf in the warm up of that TARS game against the Chiefs. Sitting on the bench there, he's called me over and he's gone, bro, have you got a heel pad or something to raise my heel? I think I've done my calf in the warm up. I was like, bro, they just got you in to play this one game, bro, or to play 20 minutes and he's done his calf. But he went well last couple of nice dump plays at the back, led the line speed for the old Bulls. So it's just, I'm happy watching it at the moment.
Nice, just enjoying being a fan.
Yeah, mate.
Yeah, cool. Well, look, leading into, I guess, this episode, as mentioned before, we are talking about player development. It is a very big topic, I guess, starting largely around what's the system of making sure that we're identifying players, retaining players, how we're developing them. And then I guess looking at that also from an individual player level, I guess there's responsibility in both camps there. Like, what's the system providing? And as an individual, how we, I guess, making sure that they're having that opportunity to develop and grow both on and off the field. And I think a big thing that probably brought about this topic was seeing the return of Quade Cooper. And I know plenty of chat around, I guess, his maturity and his perspective on footy at the moment. So I guess leading into it, we'll just have a look at his interview post-game against South Africa in the first game, and then we'll talk about it after.
Congratulations. Was that everything you dreamed of?
I mean, it's footy, and I hate to put my brother in the studio on the spot there, but, I'm so grateful for him. Like when things went a bit pear-shaped a few years ago, he was the first guy to reach out to me, and I spent about 2-3 months with him, just living with him every day, and just seeing what it takes to be a good, strong man every day. You see him with his family, see him with his teammates, the dedication, the hard work that he puts into his day-to-day life, not just when he turns up to footy training, every single day, about being a better man, about being better for himself, for his family and everything else. So, I love you, brother, and I appreciate everything, bro.
I love you too, brother. I'm still waiting for the rent that my wife was expecting for their 2 months, but nah, bro, straight up, man, so proud of you. I think, just talk us through that big, in that big moment, you just stepped up and just said it was mine. To me, that just shows that's a culmination of your journey the last few years, that you stepped up to the mark and you're ready to take it, whether you got it or you didn't. Talk us through that moment, bro.
Yeah, the first thing was I looked up and I had a kick from a similar spot just before that, and I only just had the legs to get it over, and then this is the 80th minute. Looked at it and I had a little chat to myself and said, is this your ego saying you want to take the kick, or is it what's in the benefit of the team? I looked over and had a little chat to Hodgie as well. He backed me. So, your peers are backing you. You got to back yourself as well. But we put a lot of effort and work into these sort of things. And it's not necessarily about the kick in itself, but just staying on the grind every day. And the challenge now is like when you're at a high, being able to just maintain and not get ahead of yourself. Go back to your everyday, stay in it, appreciate it for what it is. It's a great team win. It was one of the all-time test matches that I've played in, and just move on to the next. We've got another game next week, and how we go about our day tomorrow, which will be Monday, get in, recover, and just enjoy some time with my family.
Well, Quade, I can tell you, you're a hell of a lot calmer than anybody else was in Australia watching that kick, and I think we're pleased that you were that calm. We're just going to roll in some pictures of your good mate, Sonny Bill, watching. For a moment, he couldn't watch, and then he's just punching the air and celebrating. That was really special, mate, and you won't get a sense of that for the next couple of days when you've got people coming up to you and telling you just how special and how much that meant for Australian rugby fans in that moment. I think you'll get a sense of that over the next few days.
I'll definitely appreciate that, but as I said, for me, footy is just a small part of my life, and I sort of alluded to that throughout the week. And people asking me, everybody seems more excited than I am, but this is just a small part of our life. It's an important part, but it's still a small part. I look forward to being able to spend my time with my family, be able to work on my body, my mind, and continue to get better every day.
Quade, talk us through how you were able to manage your emotions. I would imagine going out there and singing the anthem, running out in the field, and then throughout the course of the match, look really calm. And then again, obviously the emotion about stepping up, taking that kick, and then afterwards. Talk us through how you managed to, I guess, keep a lid on it and use that emotion for the positive.
I think, as I said, this is a game of rugby. When we put that in perspective and understand that, we're going to walk off this field, win, lose or draw, we might be a bit sore, but it's not going to be the end of the world. We've got to go home, we've got to recover, we've got to be around our loved ones and things like that. There's so much more to life than just the result of a football game. And when you can understand that, that's when you feel at peace with the game and with everything else around us.
Quade, the Wallabies held the lead for majority of the game. Was there ever a moment of doubt when you guys found yourself on the back foot?
And when you're playing against the best team in the world, I'm sure there's always going to be doubt in people's minds. But as a collective, we've just got to continue to stay and trust in our process. And I think I commend all the boys for that. We're throwing some curveballs and similar with South Africa. They had some early cards and things like that. And the game of football is never a perfect science. So both teams put on a great spectacle for all the supporters, and really looking forward to the week ahead.
Hey, Quade, while you've been talking, we've started putting up some tweets. I'm not sure whether you'd be aware of it just yet, but the outpouring of emotion for you is incredible, and the outcry that you should now be given that citizenship that you're seeking so actively. I think that might be just about enough to get it over the line tonight.
Oh, let's hope so. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, so look, obviously for myself, I think growing up with Waxy obviously played a lot of schoolboys footy with Quade as well. So I sort of managed to see that development of him growing into where he is now as well. But just for myself, watching that interview, some of the things that I was noting down here was just, I guess, about how much maturity he seems to have around the bigger perspective of life and not just footy. I think he spoke about his ego as well, making sure keeping that ego in check, how he's managing pressure, just the process of every day, just putting in your best and being disciplined around that. His mentorship with Sonny, that I don't think, I don't know, I might be missing it, but I don't hear that kind of conversation happening a lot with players in interviews. So it seemed like a very raw, mature, different style of response to a game of footy, and what was, I guess, a very good win and a very high pressure situation. But I guess over to you, Peck, do you find that kind of mindset is really important for him as a player, or for any player really? And is that something that we need to try and embrace and develop with our Australian players?
Definitely. I think firstly, like, credit to him and to the Wallabies for what they did last week and then this week. I think it's just important for the game in Australia. It needed something special, and irrespective of how that special looked, in this case, it's Quade's return, and the team winning. So that's awesome. I think on that note, with the perspective and how to look at the game, I think it's a huge one because, especially as a young player, I did it myself, and I'm sure Waxy and Robbie have done the same, where you put rugby up on that pedestal, and it's a great thing to try and achieve, but at the same time, I think the way that it's viewed by other people can potentially, and I think Sam kind of knocked it on the head as well, where I think he was probably one of the first guys that I had met that could actually relate to the game in this way, where he was actually able to put the game in perspective to the point that he could be like, it's just a game. You do everything you can to win, but if you don't win, what does success look like to you if you're not winning? What are you doing off the field? What are you doing to, I guess, still keep things and put things in perspective, similar to how Quade's doing there? And I'd heard Sam kind of speak like that, and I'd never really thought of and looked at it in that perspective, in that way. So that's kind of the mentality that I started to kind of take on, especially when I went to Japan, and where the kind of pressure was off. So then all it came down to was that enjoyment factor. Yes, it's important, but there's so much more, in life than just footy. And I think when you can do that, you can actually do extraordinary things. And in this case, Quade's been able to disappear for a while. Not to say that he wasn't, sharpening the tools and becoming a better footy player, but he did it out of the eye of the general public in Australia. And, there's no coincidence that he's been able to come back and perform at such a high level and do it seemingly quite easily. I think, that kind of mindset is something pretty massive, and clearly it's helped someone like him and definitely help others.
Yeah, and I know you've mentioned it as well, Waxy. Like, you can still have that mindset of having a bigger perspective, but it doesn't stop you from wanting to compete. I know you mentioned that and getting that balance right. I guess for yourself, where did you get that perspective from? And growing up with Quade, is that something that you thought you would be hearing him say?
Yeah, it's funny. I like it's when you look back at, I guess, your 20s and stuff, when you, especially for Quadey and KB, Curtly Beale, and that they were the freaks, next big things. They were always destined to make it and be the rock stars of our game. And I guess when you achieve so much straight away, like I guess contracts, Wallaby jerseys through their raw talent, and you achieve it so early, it's like, I guess, as you say, how do you sustain that for your whole sort of, 10 years is such a long time, 14 years is such a long time. And it's like, where else do you get some, I guess, enjoyment out of? And I guess I think one of the big things for me is like personality and sort of being, when you talked about, should we have these conversations more often? I don't know if in the background, I'll put it to you boys, if it's, do you reckon you'd be a bit scared to sort of say this out loud? Like, because your coaches would probably think, fuck, he hasn't got his head in the game. Like, if you're not thinking about footy, you're not thinking about winning, you're not thinking about doing that. If you're talking about other stuff, you're not serious about your footy. Because I know because like Nick Cummins was the one for me. Cummo, he was the one that sort of put footy into perspective for myself. He had all this stuff going on in the background, and mate, when you try and get him to talk about footy or like learn a play or just do it, I guess, the conventional way you're supposed to be prepared as a professional, he probably had the worst game. But if you told him that, hey, bro, I reckon if you played well today, you'd get given a horse or something left field, he'd go, fuck, you know what? I want to fucking play hard to get that horse, eh? So just being like different, and mate, I coach, like boys would know, like Richard Graham and those, like even Foles, like they struggled to sort of understand Cummo, and it wasn't until Cummo started being Cummo and being the badge, where I was like, oh, this is just him. But it's, geez, I'll tell you, to get to that point for them to accept that was, mate, it was a shit fight. You know what I mean? They just said he wasn't in it. So yeah, I guess, like Quadey, seen him do that. I loved how he talked about, gratitude. Talked about how it's just footy, ego. Like ego is such a big thing. You need it, I guess, to perform. But at the same time, like he was about, do I put the team first? This was my ego wanting to take the kick to win the game, or is this what's best for the team? Like, that's a huge statement. And I also think, bro, I don't like. I guess as the commentators on that panel, I don't think they dived deep enough into that, into the Sonny Bill and Quade relationship there to say, hey, mate, what was missing from Quadey? What did you guys go into? But they still wanted to bring it back to that one kick, how he won the game for Australia, for the public, for the fans, because obviously probably a lot of pain the last sort of a few weeks for the Wallabies or a couple of months. But yeah, I just wish they had to dive further into it. I think it was an opportunity where they could have put rugby aside and just focused more on, wow, like this is a new person.
Yeah.
Bro, I reckon that point that you raised on ego, that's massive from that fella. I caught up with Quadey at the Bledisloe Cup game when we were here, when I played New Zealand at Eden Park, just before they came back over to Australia for those tests. And for a fellow like that to talk about having your ego in check, To put it in perspective, like I probably spoke with him for about half hour at just after the game, and you imagine everyone that's played with blokes like that. You're talking with the fella, and there would have been literally like every 10 seconds someone come take a photo with him. You know, like he's got people all the time. Want photo, want this, and he's like and he's playing that all at the same time. He's having a genuine conversation with me, by the way, which didn't touch on footy at all. Like, he wasn't keen on talking about footy at all. He's keen on talking about the environment, what he's able to give, about these young guys coming through, about Australian rugby, what it's like being back in New Zealand, what it's like feeling like the reception that he's received from the people here, especially the Māori people here, like all that sort of stuff. Going into all of that in that moment at the same time as like giving my kids fist pumps and all that, like making them feel comfortable, as well as making all these other guys, all these other people feel comfortable. For a fella that's been in the spotlight for such a long time, it'd be so easy for you to not have your ego in check, you know, and just think like, yeah, I'm the man, you know, and be on that plane. So I reckon that's for me, that was the biggest thing I took out of what he's saying. And that's where I think where he goes with that. If you're able to do that, understand you have so much confidence in your ability, and not have it in a way that your ego is kind of taking over, then you can explore that stuff to be like, this is more than a game, all of that.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting one. I guess, where does that contribute to performance? And I guess it is a bit of a mindset trait. And I don't know, I'll chuck it back to you, Robbie. I guess you spoke about it a little bit last episode, mentioning that in New Zealand, it seems to be a little bit more common to have these kind of conversations. You mentioned the blue head, the conversations around managing pressure and what they do in that space. Do you want to just touch on, I guess, that side of things, comparing it from Australia to New Zealand? Because I think if you're saying that this is a positive thing, how are we then developing that for our players? Is it just naturally part of a journey that they have to grow, or is there something that we can do to help them develop that kind of attitude?
To be honest, I probably feel that it's that it's just a message that's kind of driven from coaches and people that have been in positions of influence throughout New Zealand for the last few years. You know, that mindset and what mental state or what mental preparedness is for a game. And a lot of that probably comes from, you know, some of the guys like Richie McCaw, people from the outside seeing what is this guy doing and how can we get more of it? And then leaders like that within the rugby community breaking down like, well, this is how I prepare. This is what I do mentally, all that sort of stuff. And that information being shared, that's probably something in Australia that I have noticed over the years. It's just not the same information being shared throughout everyone. There's not a willingness to say, hey, let's all have this information. And even though we're competing with each other on a weekly basis or whatever it is through Super, let's have that information and kind of grow the players. That's probably not something. But to be fair, the mentally, some of the greatest things I've learned is actually from Dan Palmer and at the Brumbies. He actually told me once at the Brumbies, he's always said that, you know, this is just a game like chess or checkers. We just happen to get paid to do what we do. But in reality, it's just a game. And that fella, he doesn't back down from anyone, and is as competitive as they come. But I think it's similar to what Quade does, is that having that confidence and that self-belief, that's what allows you to go into those places.
I see you nodding there, Peck. In your own experience, where do you draw that confidence from, and how did that impact your performance?
I think just touching on Robbie's point, I think just being here in New Zealand, I think a lot of it, like sometimes they try and train you to try and have that mentality, and it doesn't feel like with like Waxy, you were there at the Force when we do like that leading team stuff, and for some guys, just you didn't feel confident saying I'm the best, because you look at our squad and you're like, mate, we lost every game bar two, last year. And like crazily enough, funnily enough, whether it was coincidental or not, we did have, that 13-14 year where we won something like 9 games or 10 games, more than we've ever won in the past. However, I still feel guys felt like they were trying to be taught this as opposed to it being a bit more organic. And I think like being in New Zealand, for example, Robbie's kind of touching on it as well a little bit again. I just feel it's a lot more organic, as where culturally it's different, and culturally it's a bit more sustainable. And by culturally, I mean not necessarily, like an island culture or a Maori culture or this culture, but I just mean the rugby culture in general is it just feels more organic, to the point that you almost feel like you slot right in, and then whatever you bring is almost like that is your DNA, and you bring that to this group. It's not, this is how we're going to teach you how to win. This is how we're going to try and do it. Like, yes, I know, with the Western Force, for example, we needed to create that winning culture, because we were always the battlers, and we'd always win a couple of awesome games, and then we'd battle to maintain, doing it week in and week out. But, if it didn't feel organic, it didn't feel like it was driven by you, then I think it was really, really hard to try and replicate that for yourself and try and put your own stamp on it. Kind of been my experience, like just from being away to being here, it just feels, like that little bit more organic, that you just, what you are is enough. And then it's just, just bring that.
Yeah.
Yeah, bro, I agree with you, Pick. I know what you mean. Like, it's exactly what Robbie said. Like, he talked about Richard McCaw there. You talked about those fellas from leading teams coming in. It was like, there was like this. I don't feel like there's like enough gurus in the game or in an organisation. So like a Phil Gould or a Wayne Bennett, like that mould, that's probably been with the team from grassroots, and grew with the team to make it feel organic. Like, yeah, they're a business at the end of the day, leading teams. They do some good things and you learn a fair bit from them. But so they get in there, they do their, like, leading teams as a leadership program where they do these things called stop, start, keeps, just to help with culture. They do some really good things there. But yeah, for some people, as I said, especially for younger guys or whatever, it's like, bro, I don't need this. I just want to just play footy. For some other people, they'll just go, for other persons, oh, this is shit. What is this? Just let me play. But like, I just think like, Quade talked about Sonny there. Like that was almost like his guru for him. Like I'm fortunate, I'm sure he won't mind me saying this, but like there's a guy named Joe Weeby, bro, like that, like who looks after like Tedesco religiously, that they James Tedesco, they talk every week or whatever, and he's been quite, like James Tedesco has quoted him just saying like he's been such a big influence in his life as a man. And I've been fortunate enough to sort of known and come close to this fella for the last sort of 12 years. And that's where that's sort of putting things in perspective and learning about like maturing and growth, development sort of started happening for myself to think a little bit different. But he was behind, a guy like him. And then you look at like, say, Wayne Bennett with someone like a Latrell Mitchell. Who else is there? Like you just see those guys, those gurus, like being able to like go the man, not the footy player, as you said, like that. And you bring that personality or whatever that to the team, and that's going to be good enough. And you combine like the hard work and the X's and O's and all that with it, you can have a pretty powerful sort of player there. But yeah, I don't know. I question the fact that do we have those guys in our game? And it seems like Rennie might be the type of guy that thinks a bit left field. to help these Wallabies. But yeah, I just think that it's happened a few times where we've lost some talent like Quade for a long time, and it's almost like they had to hit rock bottom of so-called like rugby stuff to be able to come back a new man to learn it. It's just how do we see that coming and prevent it, or sort of help grow our talent to be able to just be enough, or be level-headed and still compete, win.
Yeah, I think, like you said, Peck, I guess, is it organic? There's nothing worse than feeling like you have to be forced to fit into a culture. And I think, obviously, Quade coming out and speaking the way he did, you get young kids watching that and you're like, what's he talking about? There's a bit more curiosity. Maybe it's a bit more accepting. Maybe even for him as a Wallaby, amongst his teammates, him speaking that way, you might see that culture come organically. But I guess what you spoke about as well, Wax, is, I guess, life experience. Sometimes this type of chat comes organically just through life experience. And I guess that takes us on to some of the other guys who maybe had to experience rugby overseas, rugby elsewhere, which took them away from Australia and selection, which is, I guess, the other topic that we'll discuss. But I guess moving on to James O'Connor, you obviously had a lot to do with him over at the Force. Peck, Waxy, were you there at the same time, Robbie?
Nah. I played. I think we played school stuff and that together, and then he came. He went there pretty young. What was he, like 17?
Yeah, made his debut at 17.
Yeah, right. Unbelievable. Like, I remember an article came out in 2019 where he said, I've wasted 5 years of my life, not just in rugby, but life in general. And I guess for him to have that kind of perspective at such a young age, there's some hardships there and there's some lessons there that turn him into the more mature person he is. Does that translate into performance for him? I guess I'll chuck that over to you guys. How do you see him, Peck, as he went away, matured a bit, come back, and then what do you see?
Yeah, he was such a talented, and is such a talented rugby player. Like at the Force, obviously his talent was next to no one else's. He was, he had someone like Matt Giddo to learn off, and he probably arguably would have outplayed him sometimes. And this is Matt Giddo in his prime. And then you kind of see the demise, and you see all the stuff that's happening off the field, and clearly, you would hate to have to deal with that stuff yourself personally, but he would have had to have dealt with, clearly being an amazingly gifted rugby player to being someone that people love to almost hate, love to watch him fall over and fail, because that's what, I don't know why, but people just love to see that happen. And they like to be able to say, oh, we told you so, whatever, for whatever reason. And to see a similar kind of development, I'm sure he's done similar stuff to Quade, maybe not the same, maybe he's gone about it a slightly different way, but you can just tell that experience in itself is something that has created a lot more resilient person. Therefore, they probably cherish what they're doing more. And like you mentioned, AK, like he wasted 5 years of his life. He feels like he just wasted that doing whatever it was he was doing. So, that puts things back in perspective for him. And then with his given talent that he has, he can probably, isolate or, hone that into say playing footy now, and actually be the player that everyone kind of knew he could be, but it was just a matter of whether or not he wanted to be that player or not, and do the work. Like, that classic saying of hard work beats talent if talent doesn't want to work hard. So, in this case for him, like clearly he's learned a lot, developed a lot. And again, he just seems so much more level-headed, and that only comes through experience sometimes. Like some guys just have it, and they're level-headed all the way through their careers. But for the most part, you'd say 9 times out of 10 guys only learn through that experience.
I guess with you, Robbie, over in NZ, and having a bit of an understanding of their systems over there with development, James, he went through some life experience to give him that shift in perspective. If you're developing him in New Zealand in that system where they sort of embrace that kind of mindset and development, you as a person, How do you think he would go in a system like New Zealand?
I think New Zealand rugby's kind of learnt along the way how far to push and pull those things with those young guys. Take for example Caleb Clark, who was a young player dominating, 17 years old, setting records at under-20s World Cups and all of that. And the progression and the plan that they kind of laid out in order to develop him into the All Black that he is now. And that included like a couple years of NPC before he would play Super, or and kind of playing a handful of games each one. It included a couple stints in sevens, and there's kind of this pathway that they could kind of keep him on. That works here because I guess all those parts are moving together. The sevens teams, the Super Rugby teams, the NPC teams, All Blacks, moving together and kind of keeping the same goal in mind, which is how do we get this fella to this place that we need him for? And probably James O'Connor did a similar type thing in terms of like he played a bit of sevens, he played this or that, but was there that same plan? I'm not sure. And the boys probably could speak about Super Rugby at that time and kind of the systems and what was happening.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just think I've seen, that's the examples that I've seen here, having spoken to Caleb at different times, and sometimes he's frustrated about that plan because maybe it feels like it's taking too long. But I guess look at the proof of where it's at. Is that he didn't get burnt too quickly. He came through. They had players that were able to step into those positions while they were still working and developing this kid, to then bring him to a player who can contribute like he does.
Yeah.
But the boys can speak to those other points probably better than I can.
Yeah, I think I'll chuck it over to you, Waxy. I guess you were with him at the Force in his early years. I guess with the approach that the Force took to developing him, obviously as a young kid, nurturing, making sure he's developing. What do you see at the Force that was done really well? And do you think there was anything that maybe could have been done a bit better?
I guess the biggest draw card is what Peck said. He had Gitz in that all there. Like we had one of the best backlines in Australian rugby at that time, with Matty Giddo, Drew Mitchell, Cam Shepherd, Scotty Staniforth, and then guys like Junior Palasasa. Who else is there? Pekka. It was pretty. Ryan Cross. A lot of really quality players who I guess we could just learn. Who?
David Smith, was he there at the time?
Nah. Smithy was there a bit later. A
bit later though. Smithy wasn't there.
He was a bit later. I'm not sure if Rabs was there for when he was there. But anyway, so I guess he was able to sort of go and learn from them straight away. But as soon as they left, it sort of felt like there was only a matter of time before we probably lost him as well, as he started to hit his peak. And we lost him to Melbourne. But, I guess it, with his personality type as well, I guess similar to Quade, I guess as well, again, you're in your 20s, and we've all been in our 20s, and I guess we all think we know in our 20s what's best, and you're playing professional, you're doing everything you love, you're getting, in his case, obviously he's getting paid really well. It's like you have everything straight away. And then I guess that's where that ego can creep in. And some of the, I guess then that's why I was saying, I don't know if we had the right personality types to have really good communication about a plan. Because, man, I know they would butt heads with Richard Graham a lot, bro, about game plans, about this, about that. And then it felt like a clash just on the same page. They were trying to just keep him there because he's still young. It's like you still need to listen to what we're saying. But I don't know, some of that raw talent, it's just yes, they need to be coached, but they need to be treated differently. I just don't think they can. You can't all be treated the same. Even though you're on a team, like that talent, they have to be treated differently. They need to be communicated with differently. Remember, Peck, when Gits, would be doing the Johnny Snappers, bloody grappling, and you'd look to the back and you'd see Gits goal kicking. He didn't really do any of those sessions because, mate, he was the marquee bloke. But there was a thing that you knew that, like, we needed this guy. So there was clear communication on what the plan was for him, because the more times he played, the more chance we're probably going to win. Whereas, I just don't know if that communication would like happen, I guess, with egos both ways, with coaching staff, CEOs or whatever with the players. And it's a two-way street with those comms. But it's a hard one. It's like he probably had to go through all that sort of that journey for him to be at the place that he's at the moment. But yeah, I don't know. Like, it's just, you're probably not listening to that type of advice when you're that age too, about like growth, development, staying grateful, living in gratitude. I beat it up, bro. I'm not listening to that. You're dreaming. Yeah. That's all fairy dust or whatever. Bro, who are you? So it's a tough one, but I just think, bro, you just need there needs to be, like, even if it's not in your organization, go find someone, seek them out and go, hey, bro, I don't know how to sort of deal with this sort of person, coach this personality type. What do you recommend? Can I get you in? Like, I guarantee there would be someone that he would look up to. If you're like a coach or something, you'll do everything in your power to sort of get that person in to help develop that person, and it seems like it's happened, like, when he went there, sort of like Johnny Wilkinson or whatever, when he went to Toulon. But again, I guess it just didn't work out for him. But yeah, I guess that's how I sort of see it. It's like, do you have to go through those experiences to be able to get to the place that you're at? Or you find that person that can sort of, like, this is what's happened before. As Robbie said with Caleb, there's someone there going, bro, look at this player here. This is what happened. We've mapped this out for a reason. And we're going to go from there.
Yeah. So it's two things. Do you want to develop a player by design, or do you want to let him go by default and just have that life experience? I don't know. Maybe it's a little bit of both. Maybe it's a little bit of both. Yeah.
And it's like, do you need, are you looking for success on the footy field, like purely scoreboard success, knowing full well that's what's going to, because you only got a short time frame, especially as a coach, whatever, to get it right? Or do you actually genuinely think, oh, fuck, you know what? For this guy, he needs to be developed for long-term growth. He probably needs to go on this path, and you might not be the coach to be able to see that success. So you can see it from both ways.
Yeah.
I guess the scary thing is there. Sorry, AK, to cut you off.
You're right, mate.
Just because it's popped to my head is, you look at Quade and all the experience that he had to experience before he's got to this point, and you look at the same thing that's happened here with Rabs. He's hit the top, really rough ride. Struggled over in Europe, came back, didn't go amazingly well when he came back to Australia, and then all of a sudden found his feet. And you almost sit there going, these are 2 10s that Australia just hasn't seen for 5, 6, 7 years. Yet you're like, mate, they're back and they're probably like your 2 best 10s. Like, wouldn't you prefer, be like, hey, okay, let's just make this work. Whether it's we get them a mentor, like, obviously that's worked for Quade, in this instance, yes, he's had all that experience, but whether it's organic or not, if they could have, done that for Quade in 2011, for example, and checked him there and just got him, where he needed to be, and the same with Rabs in 2009 and 10, all of a sudden you've got these guys on tap playing 10, 12, and then setting the standard for the other 10, 12s coming through, that have all come through, your Christian Leofanos, and the list goes on and on and on. And all of a sudden you're not struggling as maybe you, as much as they have been, simply because you've got these quality players, level-headed, grounded, and contributing, as opposed to going off trying to find their own way, coming back and now contributing. And it's like, man, you had them, you had them. They just,
it's like they just wanted, like like Australian guys, like in our culture, it's like you just want hard workers, just like the humble battler, hard worker. Look, I can trust him not to stuff up off field. He's just going to do. He's not going to. He's on. Yeah, he's honest. Whatever. Like, and it's sort of like, yeah, we're going to give that guy the go because he sort of fits the image of like he's not going to give us any headaches. Whereas like a Rabs and Quade, like they're giving coaches headaches, but like quite rightfully so because they're challenging your way of thought. You need to challenge their way of thought in a way where it's going to be best for the team. But more often than not, it just bloody ended up being like a clash of personalities, and it just fuck it. Everyone gets burnt at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Like,
it was almost easier for them to go because they're too sure. Like, okay, we can't contain this. This talented footy player is like he can tell me what to do because he, I can't control him.
Yeah,
it's going to make me look bad if I lose him. Oh, we might as well cut our losses now, and try and move on and highlight what we've kept, and try and highlight the bad stuff that affected maybe the coaching staff, or it wasn't great for the team, but in reality, it wasn't great that guys like him left our team. But
it was. Yeah,
you're convinced that maybe he had to leave, but you're like, holy shit, we didn't have another guy like him ever come back in. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or not for a very long time. So you're like, and then they bring him back anyways. So you're like, oh, yeah.
Yeah. Like you just wish they had someone to bloody do that, Just like find someone, bro, to sort of so we could keep this on. Because when you see it, like if you look at Dan Carter, Bowden Barrett, Richard McCaw, and you throw in Cruden, like that, they all stayed for such were an integral part of the All Blacks sort of success. And now we're looking at Gitz, and we'll probably talk about that in the next slide. Even he got left out in 2011, World Cup. He was like one of our best players. Then went overseas and then got recalled back in and was a big contributor to the Wallabies' success in 2015 World Cup. And then like Rabs has done it. He's gone and come back, and he was a big contributor to the Reds' campaign last year and that All Blacks win last year as well. Then we're looking at Quade do the same thing. So it's like three of our best talent have had to go away, find themselves, then come back when it's sort of like, they've only got a short amount of period left to sort of play because they're in their 30s. Whereas all those guys, for the ABs, whoever they had in their corner, they were able to sustain that sort of success to set that, as you said, Pekka, that sort of platform for the rest of the guys coming through.
There's a pretty common theme there, So clearly something's not changing because the same things happen to, three of some of the greater players that have played in Australia, especially in that 10-12 jumper. Taking 100%. Nothing away from the guys who have been there, this whole time as well over the last kind of 7-8 years. But there's a common theme there, and they've come back and delivered, and you're just like, mate,
It doesn't paint a good picture, does it? In terms of like, if you're an up and coming player and you think, I got to go test overseas and then come back because that's what these guns have done. It's sort of painting a weird picture there.
Even that picture has not only been painted by like, guys had struggles that weren't rugby related. It's almost like the picture's been painted for a handful of times, even with like guys like Nick White, who got to a point in his career where he felt like, there's a roadblock here. In order to progress and get better, I need to go overseas. Whereas you don't see in New Zealand guys thinking, I'm not going to get better at rugby here. I'm going to go overseas to get better at rugby. They go overseas for one reason, and we all know what that is. They go overseas to fill the pockets and come back and just hope that they're not too far behind. Whereas in Australia, we've all played with blokes who have gone overseas, become better footy players, and brought that back. And the Wallabies team right now has, 5-6 of those blokes. And if Dave Rennie could have his way, he'd have another 10 come back from overseas. In terms of like, if he could pick all the Aussies that are out there, there's probably 4 second rowers that could come back from overseas clubs. But so the question I have is why don't we have that system in Australia where the where you can stay there and continually progress, become a better footy player.
That's so true, bro.
Well, it brings us on to, I guess, the next person. And I know we've spoken about it and there's probably crossover here, but Matt Giddo, again, you guys obviously had a lot of experience with him. What was it about him with his decision to go overseas? Was it a financial one? Was it a development one? What do you guys think, Peck?
I think it was pretty clearly documented, I think even by him, that he just didn't quite see eye to eye, I think with Robbie Deans potentially. And then I think even he admits that he kind of pulled the trigger a bit early, because similar thing, I think ego kind of got in the way there, and he decided to make the decision for them, and pulled the trigger there to go overseas. I believe that's the case, unless you guys can correct me on that, but I'm pretty sure
I think he was already going, but it was like going to be like after the World Cup.
okay.
He already signed with Ceylon.
Yeah.
And then he was going to go after the 2011 World Cup, but then didn't get selected.
That's right.
And then so he ended up like going earlier.
Yeah.
But yeah, bro, if he's not part of, like, honest to God, like, he's probably one of the best players I've ever played with. Like, I was bro, he was, man, he made you just look like a better player. Like, he took so much of the pressure on you, you know, because there was a couple of times where I played six when as a debut and stuff like that, and just I remember just feeling like I was actually an okay ball carrier, because he was doing all the work and I was just sort of like just catching it. I was like, oh fuck, I'm in like a bit of space. So I was like, oh shit, yeah. And then like when he left, I'm receiving these balls from bloody Chucky Stannard, who's like getting folded. I was like, shit, I'm shit. No.
You're right there though, Sam, with Gitz. Like, I think he was like that prime example of like a composed individual just in general. Like,
yeah,
you know, he was incredibly smart. He was quick-witted. He was funny.
Yeah.
You know, he was charismatic. Like, he had skill. He could just, he was pretty much like that whole package that kind of like epitomized, like, this is what the top caliber type of player is.
Yeah, 100%, bro.
He just could go into a room. He was just, whatever he did, turned to gold. You know, if the team didn't win, he was the reason why we were pretty close. You know, and there were so many times where, you know, I distinctively remember beating the Bulls in Perth at Doobie Oval, and I think it was 2008, maybe. Sam, you might have been playing.
Yeah, I played in that game where we won. Yeah.
And we got a penalty under the sticks, and the ref was like, full time, and we're losing by 2 points, and the ref asked Sharpie, and I remember this. He's like, "Oh, what do you want to do?" And Sharpie just laughed, and he goes, "Oh, mate, we're going for the post." And Git stands up, left footer, right side of the post, slots it, and we win. You know, we beat the Bulls, and you're just like, you know, the confidence that you had in a player like him, like the fact, like, we haven't won the game yet, but you know, your captain's sitting there, he's played 100 tests for Australia, and he's that confident that he laughs to the ref, like, "Mate, we're kicking the goal, we're going to win." You know, and he walks away, and sure enough, steps up, kicks the goal, and you're just like, you know, that stuff. Like, now you're watching some test footy and you're like, I hope we make this kick, you know, like it's just not a given anymore at the moment. You know, besides the last couple of weeks with Quade coming back, you know, there's that almost like that safety blanket of like, yep, sweet, we'll take these points and we'll move on, we'll build something off the back of this. So it was a pretty unique individual that had incredibly just an incredible talent for rugby in general. So, and just a top bloke, really. You can't really say too much about him, can't fault him really.
No, man, top bloke. But he did the same for well, it was your starting debut, but my debut against the Cheetahs, same thing, bro. We actually lost the game. Well, we'll lose him after the 80th minute. And then that the guy misses the penalty goal because of the full time. He didn't kick it out, but they went for the penalty goal, missed it. Camo catches it instead of like oh, he's just caught it and it's just gone like, oh, he made a big line break. Played a few more phases. We get the penalty. Git steps up, kicks a goal. We win their game in Bloom against the Cheetahs in 2008. But just, yeah, you're right, Pick. He's such a top bloke, bro. Like, And to say into that, like obviously he's same type of thing. He's gone away to France, probably got away from the limelight, the pressure of Aussie media or whatever. And Peck, you know this all too well. You know, when you're in a country where you don't know the language and can't read the papers or anything like that, it doesn't matter what they say, but you don't know anyway. So you can go, you know, just be freer, not have to worry because no one's going to talk to you. Mm. And then comes back in 2015 with the opportunity, talks about like, never thought this sort of moment would have happened again. Played his 100th test. But to say, and like I know Robbie pretty well now, like, and Peck, you've had something to do with Robbie at Dean's. When I had him at Panna, I think he's a great operator, bro. Like, but just to sort of say that Gitz wasn't part of the best sort of 30 bloke. How many go to a World Cup? Is it 30 or 28?
Yeah, 30 odd, probably 32 maybe.
32, whatever it is. 32. To say that he wasn't part of the best 32 in Australia in 2011, like, and Sharpie didn't make it that year either, eh? Or did he get dropped after that?
I think he got dropped after that, and he wasn't going on spring tour or something like that.
Okay. Well, something like that. But to say that they went...
And he ended up captaining or something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
Sharpie's got a story about that, I'm pretty sure. Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
But like to say that he wasn't he was not part of that best sort of 32, I just think it was a mistake. And then I guess when you see what the ripple effect, does that go, well, shit, that's how our best player got treated like that.
Yeah.
After giving so much service.
That's what I was going to ask. That was my next question. Like the influence, like obviously when you guys are making decisions of where you're going to go and play, there's lots of different factors in that. But for someone of his stature and influence, if he's a little bit bitter about how he was treated and someone's coming to him for advice, you got to wonder, like, is he as loyal to the Wallabies and Australian rugby as how he would have been if he was probably treated a little differently? I don't know. But I guess, Robbie, do other players' conversations, do they play a big part in where you decide to play?
Yeah, for sure. You have conversations with blokes who have had all sorts of different careers and things like that through your time, and they all influence the way that you approach the game or what you.
Is it just him?
Yeah, just him.
Yeah.
That Wi-Fi bill, Kaz.
Has he, you hit that threshold, the 5 gig.
Yeah.
There he is, back.
Oh, there he is.
You good, bro? You're on mute now.
Where were we?
We were just talking about how
the Wi-Fi.
The influence of your conversations with other players talking to you about the influence of other players in your conversations in making decisions about where you're going to go and play.
Yeah, it's massive. Like there's a good thing about rugby, and the blessing about rugby is there's all these blokes, all different experiences, but they've learned a lot of stuff from teams in other comps. I talked to Peck and talked to Waxy about things that they've learned in Japan, and from other guys in terms of like might be line-out stuff, scrummaging stuff, whatever it is that you look at to look at different parts of the game. There's a lot of parts of the world that have a lot to teach us about the game as well. So, I mean, if you're that way inclined, there's a lot of reasons to go overseas, and to kind of keep sharpening your tools in that regard. So all those influences, all those conversations, they definitely influence what you want to do and what direction you want to take your career. End of the day, you only got one. You're only going to have one career. You're only going to have so many years. So kind of spend that however you feel you're going to get the best experience.
Yeah. So to put that in perspective, like say go back to Quade, right? Like, because I don't know if coaches or the ARU or whatever scared to send someone over to Japan because they feel like they're going to go backwards with the development, but more often, it actually springboards your like career, like going over there. It's not like you wake up one day now you can't play, but like Quade's come from Div 2 Kintetsu, and we played against him while we were over there. They flogged us by like 70. Like it was like training part. Like there's about 7 people at the game. You know, like you're playing at 11 a.m. in the morning sometimes. Like it's such a different experience, and you get to like experience playing with other people from other teams. You know, like South Africans, you get to see how they sort of prepare. What you're talking about, Robbie, you get to see how like Kiwis prepare. You get to see like be coached by from someone from a different country and see how they see the game. So it broadens your knowledge of it. And then like he comes back, not even playing a game for how like when did you guys finish that comp, Pekka, for like that Div 2 or Div 3 or Div 2 when Kintetsu was there?
January, February, March. It was like April, I think.
So April, and then like hasn't played a game since, and then wins the game for bloody the Wallabies at test match level against the incumbent world champs. It's just sort of like, you know, you see this happen to Scott Fardy, bro. He played over there for bloody Kamaishi. Yeah. Comes back and then plays like, you know, at the age of 30 and plays like up until 35 for the Wallabies. So it's just like, should they need to see this coming? And I think that, you know, the Kiwis probably do it better with their sabbaticals, but it's just where they let Carter go for those little ones. They let Richard McCaw just have 6 months off to do nothing. And what I talked about before about like, you got to treat those players differently. It is what it is at the end of the day. As long as you communicate that with your team, you know, as the head of it, go, look, this is Gits, or this is such and such. We need to treat them this way because this is going to be what's best for our long-term success. Because I know Webby did that for bloody Kurtley Beale when he was first started at the Tars. He told us a story about, he goes, righto boys, there's rules for Kurtley and there's rules for everyone else. It is what it is. We got to bloody get it through this. Obviously KB, Mount Druitt boy out west, a bit rough around the edges sometimes. But like, if he was bloody, if he was to sort of say, stick to the same sort of normal sort of standards culture. Hey, if you're late, bro, get out. You're done. You know what I mean? You're late twice. Sorry, mate. You're done. You're no good to us. Go. If they had that to Cape, bro, he wouldn't have had a career. I don't reckon. Like that's why he moved across the road from bloody Moore Park at the stadium. And when he was playing for the Tars, to be able to help him along, but to do that, like if the management that are up front, you know, this is how we're going to treat this fella. Well, then I think it's only be benefit to yourself because, well, if you're going to get the best from him, well, sweet, I'm going to bloody come along for the ride with it and contribute as well.
Do you get your filthy ones too? Like, does it create a bit of a?
You probably would, for the guy who's behind him. You know what I mean? Just sort of like. You know, and it would, but at the same time, it like, you can't keep. It's like you can't keep everyone happy, like, and you don't have to like every decision. But if that person's bitter and it can't see what's like, obviously, what's the betterment of for true like team success, then he probably shouldn't be there either because he's going to be the cancer or whatever. Like it's just getting. You can't have too many of the same personality types, obviously, in the same team. Say if you had all 4 of them, that personality type, you go shit. It's never going to work. But like, if you get the dynamic right, like it will. So,
yeah, sweet. Well, probably leads well into the next one, and we've spoken about decisions around where you're going to go and play, and just a few players who've obviously made decisions to go elsewhere instead of staying to play rugby in Oz for all different reasons. But where's the first one? Mike Alalatoa obviously ended up at the Crusaders.
Sound okay?
Got no sound, bro. Do you want me to get on YouTube?
No, it's all good.
Nah, it's all good. That was a clip where he just talked about he's only 24 years old, born in Sydney, and he's just joined the Crusaders. But it's just like, how do we let that fella go? He talked about he was in our system. He was there, like, you know. And had to go and get development elsewhere. Like he is, like when he was playing NRC, it's not like he was like 150, 60 kilos where he's just like, bro, we just couldn't get his weight down or anything. But he was still like a beast. How? But like, yeah, I'll let you fellas go into it.
There's a fair few examples like that. I think Pete Samu was exactly the same. You know, had to go over, play for Tasman. played for the Crusaders as well. Jack Lamb was a massive one. Way back, went to Tasman, went to Waikato Hurricanes. Like, there's a fair few examples, and I just think maybe in Australia we're just too quick to write some blokes off, or to say we're not progressing down this path. Maybe that's because there's a lack of pathway coming through in terms of like strength of a NRC comp. We tried that, but to say that, to filter those blokes through, because maybe when they went there, maybe they weren't at the stage when they're going to play every week in a Super Rugby team. But after a year playing NPC or whatever, jumping into a New Zealand Super Rugby system, then they're at that level, and then we're begging them to come back.
Yeah.
So where is that? Like,
is that a question on Australian development pathway? Or is that something that's actually more pointed in the direction that like the NZRU or New Zealand can spot what they need more so than what the Australian rugby pathway can spot?
Well, it's like, I reckon it's probably that, Pecco. It's like they can see that. Like they can see that guy at that 21, 20. They're not just sort of plucking him and hoping him. They've probably had someone sussing that out for a while, and they were like, okay, we could probably have this guy here. I see potential. And in our environment, if he doesn't succeed in our environment, then he's never going to succeed. But it's like you look at it from an athletic point of view. What's he weigh?
Oh, he'd be 125, maybe.
Yeah, 125. Strong as an ox.
Strong as an ox, fit. Scrum well. And he's at the Crusaders. Like, it's not like he's at a heartland team. Like second division ITM. Like, he's gone straight to the Ducks Nuts of Super. Well, someone's obviously seen something.
He's won 4 Super Rugby premierships.
There you go. You know what I mean? That, and you're like, how then? How the hell did that happen? How did that get through?
How? And it's just like, what is it? What is it about our pathway that we just can't? So we talked about it before about the our top players probably not getting the comms or the treatment or whatever they have to do to try and to keep them. Now we're talking about the do we not see the potential talent? So we've got the ones that are already playing now. We've got the potential ones that are there, but it's like, well, I'm going overseas anyway because no one's looking at me or no one's giving me any type of comms, or they've gone, here's $1,500, train and trial. But and so if I stuff it, I want to go overseas because, mate, if we look at who's the next bloke? Okay, is there
Namani?
Look at Namani Nadola. Look at this. Look at this, bro. He's playing for Manly here. This is our Aussie 20s team.
Quade.
There's Quade, bloody.
Right.
And wasn't he like the top try scorer in Shoot Shield, and he couldn't get a contract or something? And
yeah, I think the Tars ended up signing him.
Oh, they did end up signing him.
But obviously he was behind Takiri and Lockie Turner at that stage. But still, look at this fella, bro. I'm pretty sure that's Bastard too. I think it was. This guy's just running amok. Like, again, he goes to the Crusaders. So you thought about Mike Yalatoa, Pete Samu, and the Namani Nondolo have gone to the Crusaders and just really stamped their mark there. And it's not like they weren't killing it at Shoot Shield or at our age group bloody national team level. Like they were there. They were there. And it is still twofold as well. Like, because he was at the Force A.
He was at the Force, and I think
2007, 6, whatever it was.
I think it was 2007 potentially.
Yeah.
And as someone who'd been in the program, in that particular program around the Force, like you could just see his demeanor and the way that he carries himself isn't going to sit well with these guys. Like you can just tell, 'cause he was chilled, he was big, and he's just like real blasé. He's just a chirpy, happy guy, right? Big personality, big guy. Was he super fit? Nah, but he was only 18, 19 years old. He was 6'4". How big is he? 6 foot? 7?
6'4", bro.
6'4", $120 maybe at the time, maybe $125 at the time. So maybe a bit big. He wasn't great at like changing direction or whatever, but like you're like, mate, he could score a try. And the moment
he could find a line,
could find the try line, and then he gets injured scoring a try. I think in NRC potentially it was, does his hammy, and you can just tell that they're like, see, we knew it. We knew he's not fit. That's why he's done his hammy. Nothing on the program that they've been giving him or anything like that. It's just like, no, they're almost like waiting for him to fail so that they can move him on.
Exactly what Robbie said, bro. It's like they write him off too early.
Way too early.
And then instead of having a plan like Caleb Clark, and again, it's like, if you can't look at that fella, bro, he is a specimen.
Mate, he's huge.
Like how do you, like, if a bit of comms, like really good comms, a guru, what we talked about behind it all.
Get someone around him, Get
someone around him to live with him, bro.
Live with him, take care of him.
Take care with him, something.
Mate, he'll be loyal to a place that look after him,
Exactly, bro.
But instead, you don't perform, or you're not that diamond in the rough that we need. You're not that superstar that we've been able to find with your James O'Connors. We'll find the next one. We're already found. We know what we're looking for, and it's like, well.
So who's responsible? Who's responsible for that, Peck? I guess as you as a player could identify some, I guess, deficiencies maybe in a bit of attitude or how he's carrying himself. Whose head does it sit on to say, hey, mate, like, come have a conversation. I've just noticed this. This is what we need to improve. What do you need to sort of achieve that? Where does that conversation come from?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think it's a combination of a few things. I think as senior players, you could probably be better. Like, I know for a fact that I wasn't a senior player then. Obviously, I was still quite young, but I'd been there a little bit more and maybe could have given a little bit of insight, potentially. At the time, I would have been, 19, 20, maybe 21. So I wasn't all that well equipped. I was still trying to figure out this whole professional rugby thing as well. However, if there were more senior players in his position that had been there a little while, to be completely honest, if I was a senior player in his position, I wouldn't be giving them anything, because I'd be scared. I'd be like, holy shit, if this guy's, you can see that he's got talent, you'd almost be like, oh, maybe you want this one to pass through, hopefully. So, that's just from a competitive side. But I think if I were a senior player, you would definitely just explain to him, mate, here, we need to be able to do this stuff. Push it really hard, take him under your wing. And someone like him thrives. He doesn't have to move around anymore. He'd be happy to stay. He'd get looked after. And then the next thing is obviously coaching. How does that look? I think, Waxy, you might be a good one on the coaching side with, the Pacific Island way, how to coach them, how to approach that, speaking with them, and trying to develop them slightly differently as opposed to maybe in front of the whiteboard kind of thing.
I'm big on that. I reckon, I guess what you guys talked about with New Zealand culture in terms of being a little bit more organic, because there's a lot more Pacific Islanders, Māori culture. I think there's more of an organic understanding on how to sort of approach. There's more than one way to skin a cat. I always thought that maybe, I guess Aussie coaches maybe struggled with communicating with Islanders. I guess over the perception maybe is that like intelligence isn't a great attribute of our people in terms of sporting sense. It's just like simple tasks of run hard, tackle hard, X factor, not going to understand the game plan properly or whatever. I felt like that was a perception that was given to our lads. But bro, like, it's just, I just don't, it's not, yes, quite rightfully so, it's a two-way street. There's so many times where it's just like, Kaz, Right? You don't need to be drinking the night before the game or writing yourself up or just turn up to training on time. But when I think about it now, because we've been put in that position, that awkward position, where we've tried to give that advice on to some Islanders or whatever, but it just hasn't come across right because it's come from the head coach.
It's not organic.
Right? It's not organic, you know what I mean? It just
genuinely trying to help.
And you're putting it, So we're put in that position of like, oh, yeah, fuck, all right, we'll do it, but not realizing like I just don't think it was done well. But like there's just too many of our Pacific Islander like brothers that have just gone straight away. Like when I think of our wingers, bro, I think of Nams. Obviously, he's represented Fiji now. He was in our grass, but then I think of what's that other fella? I forgot his name again. Played for Panasonic, Tars, other big Fijian winger. Tangele. Tangele. Imagine those two on your wings for the Wallabies, but they're still in their primes. And then then you got like obviously Benny Volavola, he's starting for Fiji. He is a gun too. And I think he'd be a walk-up start in a lot of the Super Rugby teams if they had kept him. But there's Jack Lamb, Selala Lamb, his brother. Who else is there? And then you've even got some guys like Ben Gunter who's playing for Japan. Oh man, I think feel free to jump in, boys. There's a lot. Yeah. So you can either say there's a ton. You can either say Paul Aloa as well. Oh, Jared Hargraves. There's another one, bro.
Yeah.
But he was actually Union first, like genuine Union. Hadn't even played any league. He was in our Aussie 19s team, bro, back in 2007. Played for Norse, was part of the NRC team 2006, and obviously
they won it. Did they win it?
Yeah, they won it that year. The first ARC, back then.
ARC, yeah.
Bro, he was like, he loved shoulder charging, lads. That's for sure. Training with that tackle pad, easy. Put some of us in bloody, put some of us away there like that. But like again, I think I'm pretty sure it was I could be wrong here, but I'm pretty sure from memory, like it was a similar contract to like, because we were in the same sort of Waratah Academy. It's like, hey, we see you as another professional academy, 18 grand for one more year. Then you'll go to a rookie contract and that'll be 35 grand. And then in your third year, you'll be considered a professional full-timer, which would be 52 grand. It got delivered through a manager and the high performance sort of manager back then. But then he goes and meets with Manly. Des Hasler comes to the meeting and says, we see you played in first grade in 2 years, bro. Here's X amount. You hit that, you're going to be first grade and this is what you're going to earn. And then it was just a no-brainer. He's gone.
Yeah.
So it's like...
Well, you just look at those names there. We've just spoken about like your Giddos that's left, your Quade, your Rabs, then you got your Nandola who left before he even started. Then you've got your White Hargraves. Like you're like, holy moly, like
Mike Alatoa, Pete Samu.
Pete Samu. You're like, mate, these guys could have had that talent from the start.
Yeah,
those guys are teaching other guys, like like these guys who have this talent. It rubs off, it rubs off and they offer it down, even if they don't want to. Why? Because guys want to be like them, or guys in their position, or guys around them are like, this is what they do. Similar thing. They've left, this is what they do. Do you know what I mean? So guys following those footsteps, whether they're doing it on purpose, I guess you'll never know. But one thing is definitely for sure, like if you have all those guys in one team, you're like, even if it's just a super team, you're like, mate, you got a pretty good chance of winning consistently.
Yeah, like you put all those guys back in their Super Rugby teams, like it puts then those guys that probably came in maybe 2 or 3 years early, they're still having to wait a bit and craft and sharpen in their tools. And by the time they do play, they're not bloody making those mistakes at Super Rugby level.
Yeah.
Because it was you, Robbie, that was saying when we got some of those boys in from Clubland to jump in lineouts and stuff this year, it's almost like you got to stop the whole session because their jumping technique was off.
Yeah, there's a lot of things like I just think that they're where you get those roadblocks where it's like blokes are making decisions on players people, so whoever it is making decisions on players because they're not up to that, up to the level of Super Rugby, they're probably not making the wrong decision at the time. In terms of like maybe they weren't up to that level, but but how do we get them there?
Yeah.
The question. And how so like because you name all those guys, there's a ton of them, and at some stage a coach had to choose between them and someone else. Someone else probably was at that level, but how do we encapsulate the whole thing? And to be fair to the coaches, as you get older, you in the footy environment and in the teams, you realise the coaches are in the same position as us. You know, the coaches get punted just as quickly as we do, if not quicker.
Way quicker. Mate, you get guys that can hold on for 5 years. They go through 2-3 coaches. I'm a prime example. You know, you see like coach, and you're like, I don't know if it's the coach though, because far out, we've got some pretty good, you know, you might have some good cattle. Okay, maybe it's the coach, but then you've got like far out, man. We've got guys that have played pretty inconsistently, but the coach gets resold, you know, and you're like, shit, like,
we can. It's a two-way street, but you can keep blaming the system. But when you name all those guys who are like a genuine superstars now,
absolutely,
and then you go, come on, bro, like it is a two-way street. Don't get me wrong, but you're putting your head like. As a 20-year-old, what we're saying, or 19 or 25, but even like how much more mature are you now as a 32, 35-year-old compared to when you're 25? And so you want those men who are supposed to be like managers or whatever around you to sort of help mind your young mind to make better informed decisions. Yeah. But like it's like at the moment, it's like you're like. Is it like a clash of egos again, like with the personalities? It's like, well, you got the older guys. Well, I'm older than you. I know you're such a young fella. You don't know. Yeah. Well, young fellas are pretty informed too, bro. But they might not be able to articulate the words a little bit more or whatever. Or they might be erratic with their decision. Go, no, fuck you, I'm out. But there's got to be some common ground to keep them. Has to 100%.
Be. I think the question is, what is the system that allows our players and our coaches to develop properly, like in terms of like the coaches as well, because the coaches are just like us. They got things they need to work on and you know all that sort of stuff. How do we develop before we bloody get resold after a couple of years of kind of not progressing, or to be seen to not be progressing? Yeah, because there's some coaches that we've let go and have gone overseas and done unbelievable, and even some coaches used to do roadblocks. Like a DC just got that TARS job, and he's won the comp one shoot shield 3 times, no opportunities, and has to go overseas to get that. How do we have the structure to develop them so then they can develop the players so that this machine just keeps churning rather than just hoping that World Cup time we get the best talent in the country?
Yeah. Bro, it's funny you say that about coaches, about coaches. So look at some of our best coaches who have gone now. Like Ewan McKenzie's lost to the game. Now, like he's gone. Like Michael Foley, like he's lost it. Bro, he's one of the smartest set piece guys. Bro, hard man though. Yeah. But just like in terms of like knowledge, he's lost to the game. Then you got someone like Daniel Hellinger, who's at bloody at the Blues. You know, as the assistant backs coach. Sammy Harris and Mark Gerard. They're over at bloody the Gilronis over there. Yeah, AZ over there. And like who is it? Like so it's like
Peter Hewitt at
Peter Hewitt, yeah. So it's like so
it'd be interesting to see if they drag any of them back to super teams to age group, like you know, your 20s programs, then because
I think they have been, bro. Peter Hewitt was part of that, bro.
Okay.
But like at the same time, it's like it was like even my own experience of asking like, okay, what's the development pathway for a coach to come through? For a time when I was thinking, I was like, oh, bro, I might coach, and then going to the guys at TARS, and then going to the guys at AU, they're like, oh, they couldn't give me a real straight answer on what it looked like.
I don't think there is, mate. It seems like Australian rugby honestly seems like it's mates for mates. You know the right person, you'll get there. You know, like it doesn't like you look at the coaches that get selected, it's like they're already at, I haven't seen them come through. It's like they were just sitting at this other job and that's all we looked at. They were the only guys that we genuinely looked at for the job. And you're like, there's got to be other guys, or there's, you don't actually know who they've looked at.
Yeah.
Making that decision. And as players, I guess that's always the hardest thing, is that you have no control who your coach is going to be. And if they're not the right coach for you, then you kind of, similar to what like Rab said, like, yes, you might not be wasting, 2 or 3 years, but you're not going to develop as a player over that 2 to 3 years, because it might not be, that particular coach might not be teaching you anything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then you're like, they pull in their same guys, they might, the forwards coaches might be great, they might not be, but they've got the job. And you have no say and no power over it. You trust, the board members or whoever it is that make those decisions, that they've done the absolute best they can to get the best that they can get. And sometimes you sit there and you're like, mate, if this is the best that we could get, like.
Well, that's an interesting one, Peck. And I guess a good one to discuss, I guess, before we go into your final settlers around player development. But I guess if you were in charge of picking who the best developmental coach is for the Wallabies at the moment, taking nothing away from Rennie, obviously, but from your own experiences and dealings, who's the man for the job? Waxy?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked Waxy first.
Well, to be honest, I think it had to be someone that's been in the system, either been in the system for a lot, knows the fabric. It sort of blows my mind that we don't have any past Wallabies.
Wallabies, yeah.
Like probably since Ewan McKenzie being like the head coach, or even at Super Rugby level. Like, so when I was listening to this potty the other day, talking about like their companies and their retail stores or whatever, only people who were apprentices become their GMs and CEOs of those retailers. Like, so they start from the bottom and understand everything. So like they know what it's about. They know what the fabric is and stuff like that. And when you look at the Crusaders model, it's like they only sort of employ from within. It's like their head, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure every head coach is a past Crusader. So it's just, and they might employ one other person outside of it to come in and have a, like, just to keep their ideas, if they're fresh, something can draw something from, like when they bought Ryan O'Gara or whatever, from Ireland, let's just see where we can sort of use his knowledge to sharpen our axe even more. So I just so if we look at the Reds at the moment, obviously it's bloody Thorny. He's done everything in the game. He's a Brisbane Bronco, like Queensland. But so he knew like what it means to be a Queenslander, comes through. But then I just, then when we look at the Tars, like I've always found it weird at the Tars how there was like no ex-player being the head coach there. Like it just, I don't know. I know Czech had success and stuff there, but again, he came from Randwick and sort of knew it that came through. And they had a hell of a team too. He just had to sort of put it in check. But I just,
does anyone in mind?
Yeah, I've gone about that the long way. But
just trying to figure out some Australian,
some Australian who's in the mix there. But I guess one that comes to mind is Wisey, bro, like Scotty Wiseman, and he's probably been there right from the get-go, bro. He was my AIS under 15s coach, bro. He was Peck's bloody 20s, 19s bloody coach at the time. Been under Eddie Jones, been in the England system, Japanese system, been all around the world. He's such a champ. I don't know if he wants a head coaching role, but like in terms of someone that just, for me, that gets it, I feel like, he's a bloke that surely has got to be the head coach at some stage.
Yeah, nice. How about you, Robbie?
I reckon, actually, one of the things I've actually really appreciated about the Wallabies as they are now is I reckon that the coaching's been unreal. Like just watching them, the way that they've played and the development of the team, the way they're attacking, all of that sort of stuff. So I reckon right now, the combination and just talking with Wisey and with Waxy and Wisey just through a couple of training sessions through the year, and meeting Dave Rennie, I reckon they're in a perfect spot to be doing what they're doing and developing that team. For the future, I think Dan McKellar is a great one for Australian rugby. Like, I reckon he's a guy who's world class at what he does. Like, he knows what he does, all the set piece detail and stuff, and he delivers it at a high level. And you're seeing the fruits of that now, like in terms of mentality into set piece, delivering at scrum, at line out, more, all that sort of stuff. You're seeing the boys already start to have an identity around that now. Being coached by him, I appreciate where he comes from. I reckon he's an awesome man for the job in the future. He's one that will always want to learn from, like, guys like Wisey, Dave Rennie and that through this period. So and he's still pretty young. So I reckon by the time, or at some stage in the future, the time will come. I reckon he should or would get the nod.
Yeah, awesome. Be interesting to see who gets the Brumbies as well and how that flows on. Pekka, how about you, mate? Who are you tapping on the shoulder?
I think not too dissimilar to Wykesy, but like Wisey is a awesome coach. But when I think of the Waratahs, like in their heyday, I can't help but go past someone like Andy Friend, who I thought was just one of those guys that always seemed to present incredibly well. I've never had him as a coach. I've only ever spoken to him in person when I was in the academy, when he was up at that level with the Waratahs, and then didn't have a lot to do with him, but just only ever heard good things about him, whether it was from past players, past managers, past staff. And I don't know if he would be at that level to maybe take on the Wallabies, but I could imagine that he would happily do that in a heartbeat and would do it with so much conviction just based off what I know about him as a person, which, like I said, hasn't been, and this is the crazy thing, like, I hadn't had a lot to do with him, but the moments that I did have to do with him, whether it was just in conversation, talks over the phone, he really, I guess, had a presence for me. And it's something that I've remembered, like, way back in, we're talking 2003 or 2004, where I first met this guy. So, is that just me, just because I liked him as a person? Maybe. But, I don't know, like, well, actually, you might have had a bit more to do with Friendy than I would have, maybe, at the Tars.
No, I didn't have him at all, bro. I only met him in Japan.
Okay, and
I had him at the Brums when I was young, when I was real young. I loved him, and I reckon that's a perfect example of a coach. He's been resold twice from Australian rugby, and he was young when I had him at the Brums, and he's had success. All of the overseas clubs that he's had. So I just think they were too quick to say, nah, this isn't the bloke, and move on, instead of develop what we've got.
Come back to that development, eh?
Yeah, develop what we've got and let them come through. Let people progress. Let people get better before we just, look at, who else can we just throw in this role? And then we punt that bloke in a couple of years too. So
that's like Bernie Larkham, actually. I forgot about Stevie Larkham.
Yeah. Right. You would actually thought that would be a natural progression, wouldn't you?
Yeah, but obviously shit's just got in, like, personality clashes or whatever, breakdown in communication has sort of left a sour taste there. Who knows if he will come back? But I guess probably to come back to it again, probably thinking about now after hearing you guys say it, I think that bloody Twiggy Forrester just needs to bloody throw money at a problem here and get all those guys back and pay them overs, like genuine overs, to be like development sort of coaches, like Australian development coaches, all throughout fucking all the systems, like, and just get them in there as part of their, like, you think of like Giddo's about to retire, or at some stage he will. Like you can't let that IP go, bro. Hey,
yeah, you can't let that IP go. Exactly.
You can't let that IP go, bro. Like someone's got to be able to tap it. Yeah, have to find the coin to do something. Because all those names, all those experiences in terms of like that have had to go overseas to develop, we can't let that happen. Keep happening. It's like Steve Hansen said, we need 3 teams. Like we've all played for bloody startup franchises. It just like it gives you an opportunity. That's not the case, but there's plenty of talent here in Oz. It's just bloody having the same system to funnel that gold jersey.
Yeah, nice. Well, we've gone full circle, boys. We've started off from a player perspective and I guess development and what led to that. Spoke a little bit about the mindset and maturity and ego. How do we develop that if that is something that we're identifying that we want within our teams, and how that translates into performance. We've spoken about some of the ones who maybe got away and maybe a little bit too early, and then we finished with a little bit of coaching and those coaches who you guys felt maybe could help nurture this current side. Rennie's 1-2 from 2 the last 2 games. We're talking about his next coach already. Bit harsh, but
he'll be there for a while. Listeners.
Those coaches that we just spoke about, and then all of a sudden you're like, mate, imagine if he got to have the luxury of just, can I pick your brain for a bit? Can I pick your brain?
Yeah.
Just ideas. Like, you're not saying you need it, you're not saying you don't need it, but like conversations like this, it just might be 1 or 2 things that you're just like, I love that.
Yeah.
Bang, that's in. You know, hell yeah. Bang, that's in. No, I don't like that. Bang, but I like that. That's in. You know.
Yeah.
Like I'm sure they do talk and whatever, but yeah.
Yeah.
I reckon on that Rennie part, I've only met like a couple of times, but he strikes me as a guy who understands his role is bigger than just coaching the footy team in terms of like, and it's a bit of that Kiwi rugby culture that Peck was talking about, where like he understands, it seems to me that he understands that his job is to prep everyone for the next, whatever comes after him, you know? And that's, even just in the conversations that he has, it seems that he's pushing to be better, but also prepping these coaches, teaching these blokes, helping these guys so that when one day whatever happens and he steps away, that Australian rugby's in a better spot.
Yeah,
100%.
Well, actually, like an interesting thing about Dave Rennie, is that like he's actually from around here in Lower Hutt, actually Upper Hutt, and I played my 100th game against the Chiefs there in Waikato, and you know, talking about being genuine and organic, like, you know, this guy came up to me, you know, it was unscripted, you know, we'd lost the game, but like, you know, we're just sitting in the change room, we've done the presentation, he comes in later and just kind of comes up to me and he's like, oh, you know, Pick, I actually knew your dad, you know, yep, I know your dad, Maureen, I know your uncle and stuff, and I was kind of like, holy shit, I didn't know that. You know, and he just kind of, you know, he gave me a jumper, you know, he got a jumper, it wasn't signed or anything, but he got me a Chiefs jumper, and like, that's my first time I'd ever met this guy, you know, and I was just like, fuck, well, I'll never forget that guy's name, you know? So, you know, to I guess to go off what you just said, Robbie, where he just seems like he knows it's more than just like that footy, it's more than just your 100th game, you know, he made a connection, he had a connection, and he took that and brought it to me and made it known to me, because I had no idea. So, you know, like that kind of thing sticks with me. So I can only imagine, you know, the stuff that he's implementing with the Wallabies at the moment. You know, bringing guys in, bringing in your McMahons and things like that. And you're like, oh, shit. Like,
he's making the right moves, isn't he?
You'd think so. The results would probably say so. So that's...
Yeah. Waxy, final settler, mate. Don't sit on the fence. Give us one thing, one opportunity where you see Aussie rugby being better in terms of player development and retention.
I'm seriously for public schools, bro. Public high schools, making like that sort of public high schools versus the private schools, like having some type of comp there that aligns, bro. That filters in through from that level. There's so many good players, especially out west and stuff, that probably will go to league because it's probably just more accessible to them, or league or AFL. But I just think if we can capture that market with a bit of coin, bit of hype. I think it could go a long way.
Nice. Over to you, Robbie. Where do you see an opportunity for Australian rugby?
Yeah, for me, it's let's just get set on what does our landscape actually look like at the Super Rugby level in terms of like, do we run a South Africa model where we pick from the whole world for the national team, which takes away potentially a lot of players from Super Rugby, or do we go like New Zealand and have strictly pick from our Super and make our Super Rugby teams real strong, or do we sit somewhere in the middle? And my gut feel is probably it's somewhere in the middle, because you can't run it like the Saffers because they love rugby that much, and and we've probably tried the other way as well with the NRC and all of that. But I just think if we have a definite way and we think this is the way that we're going to do it, and it works, and we can start to get all the players through, whatever it may be, however many players you want to pick from overseas, however way you want to get Super Rugby strong in terms of like number of teams and all of that. Let's just get set on one and then have a bloody red hot dig, because I feel like my whole career we've probably kind of been jumping between systems, if that makes sense, and that's just my career time period that it's been in Australia. It just seems like this expansion and this expansion, Super Rugby changes, all these sorts of things, and that's my feeling is that let's just get set on what we're doing. This is the way we're running it, and then and have a dig in it for a good 10 bloody years or something.
Give it the chance to succeed. Over to you, Peck. Final settler, mate. Finish us off. Where's the opportunities?
I think the opportunity really is, yes, with the players, like we've kind of spoken a lot about that. But I reckon the coaching is something that's really massive, and not just being a good coach and knowing everything. I think being a good person and being able to connect and know your audience, so know who you're dealing with as a coach, and almost be able to encompass that and be like, these are the guys that we need, or, for example, have a plan in place so that someone like, like a Wykesy or Robbie or whoever it is can be like, how do I get there? This is how I'm going to get there. This is what I'm going to bring. Yeah, I got that footy stuff. You got that on lock, but this is what I want to bring as well. And I think that stuff really, like when I look at, your Paul Tito being our forwards coach, for example, like, mate, he's just a good bloke. He's just, he doesn't talk too much about all the little nitty gritty stuff, because he knows that if he needs to do that stuff, he does that outside. He does that separately to what he wants to bring as a coach. He wants to bring that fun. He wants to bring that attitude. He wants to bring drill, things like that. It's really simple cues. And then if he wants the little stuff, he gets that separately. And, you look at his development pathway was pretty like here, there, and everywhere. And I don't even think, he signed with the Force now. And even his development pathway still wasn't as great as what you might have thought. Like, you would have thought he's here at the Lions, and naturally he might look at, the Hurricanes, and for whatever reason that fell over, and now he's gone from the game here. And, I'm looking at it from a coaching perspective, and you're like, far out, like, maybe they might have want to keep someone like him. So where's that development pathway for coaches coming up? So my one's probably maybe a little bit less on the player side, because we've covered a lot of that, and maybe more towards that coaching, mentoring side, to try and help, especially that really good young talent coming through, just staying where they need to be to give Australia that, like we spoke about earlier, that long-term 10, 12, or 2 or 3 options here and there, longer term.
Awesome.
There we have it.
Well, plenty of good points, good stuff there, lads. As an outsider, just your average punter and fan of rugby, I've enjoyed this chat, getting a bit of an insight from you blokes about players and systems, and thank you for your time. And for those of you, if you're following along, to our 12 followers, leave a comment. Leave a comment, subscribe.
And we're 4 of them.
If there's any other areas or things you've liked about this episode, make sure you let us know. We love chatting about rugby, so we want to make sure we're catering to you guys. And make sure you follow us on Instagram, on our socials at the Settler Rugby Show. Thank you to our sponsors, HMT Vending and Naked Apparel.
Yes.
And we'll see you on the next episode.
Sweet boys.
Back the most solo athletes, the ones that for the peaks, cause them ladies trying to catch me.